she was eating when we brought the first tray of samples in. That was the detail that stayed with me. 47 Anvarath Institute personnel had spent 11 days building the containment ward around her. Sealed atmosphere locks, dual redundant filtration membranes, pathogen-grade observation glass, rated to hold anything in our catalog short of a Tier 1 emergent, and she, cross-legged on the examination bench, eating something from a foil packet she had apparently been carrying in her flight suit. She did not look up when the seal cycled. She finished chewing, set the packet down with care, and said, in the flat reach trade pigeon all human personnel seem to use with strangers. The small one is for blood draw, yes? The big one is for the serology. You can start. She had read the trays faster than my junior analyst had. I introduced myself, function rather than name. Containment physicians at the Anvarath Institute do not exchange personal designations with subjects during active protocol. It clouds the record. I told her we were going to run a full serology panel, and then a targeted pathogen challenge sequence, and that the challenge sequence would begin with attenuated Kareth analogs at 1/10 exposure concentration. Told her this the way one tells a patient, the needle will be cold, she said, sure, and held out her arm. The Kareth plague had reached the outer compact systems 14 months prior. By the time it crossed the inner relay stations, it had killed approximately 4 million Vareni, a comparable number of Therathi, and had reduced the Kessin population on 3 colony worlds to statistical noise. What made it notable was the consistency. It found a host, located, and ended the host. Every model we ran, every prophylactic compound the Institute developed, the Kareth strain adapted around all of it, within 6 to 8 replication cycles. It was not clever, it was simply thorough. In our experience, that was worse. The human female, her name was on her flight suit, but I will call her the subject throughout this record, had been found 17 days after a survey vessel went down in the outer Kessin debris field. She was the only one aboard who survived. The other 11 crew members had been Therathi and Kessin nationals. Our initial assessment had taken that as the explanation. The Kareth strain expressed differently across species, and humans might carry a marginal survival advantage we had not yet cataloged. Expected a mutation. Something recessive, something rare, something we could isolate and replicate. That was the entire purpose of the containment ward. The first blood draw came back clean. No Kareth antibodies, which meant no active infection, confirmed already by symptomology. What my junior analyst flagged as an anomaly without yet understanding it. No antibodies at all for the Kareth strain. Not suppressed, not cleared, absent, as if the subject's immune architecture had not recognized the pathogen as a threat worth logging. That was not how immunity worked. Not for any species in our catalog. You survive a pathogen, you carry the record. That is the baseline, that is what the word means. I ran the draw again. Same result. Tertiary confirmation with a Therathi-developed cross-species assay protocol. Same result. Then I began the challenge sequence. The attenuated Kareth analog at 1/10 concentration, our standard opening exposure, went into the sealed secondary chamber adjacent to the subject's assay bench. The filtration system was calibrated to permit molecular scale particles through the intervening membrane at a controlled rate. For a Varenhi subject at full prophylactic treatment, we expected some immune activation at this concentration, a measurable antibody response within 40 minutes, full mobilization within 2 hours. For an untreated subject, we expected a response within 15 minutes, sharp and defensive. In the subject, we measured nothing for the first 8 minutes. I was about to flag a membrane failure when the readout updated. Not an immune response. The analog was simply gone, neutralized. The assay chamber showed residual breakdown products, consistent with complete molecular dissolution of the Kareth strain, and the breakdown signature was not enzymatic, it was antibody-mediated. Something in the circulaceum's serum she had passed through the membrane had already known what the analog was, and had dealt with it before. The challenge concentration was even high enough to trigger our detection threshold. I increased the concentration to 1/2. Standard exposure. Lethal to an untreated Therathi subject within 6 hours. The result came back in 4 minutes and 30 seconds. Complete neutralization. Same breakdown products. Same antibody-mediated signature. No immune activation event detected in the subject. No elevated temperature. No vascular response. No measurable cellular mobilization. Her body had not noticed. She was reading something on a small handheld device by this point. I had not seen her look at the assay equipment once. My senior pathologist, a Vareni named Torvin, who had 22 years on the council, and had personally developed the Carith strain's initial classification index, asked me across the observation channel to confirm the membrane was sealed. I confirmed it. He asked me to confirm the assay protocol was correctly calibrated. I confirmed it. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "Ask her when she was last treated with a prophylactic compound for anything." I asked her. She looked up from her device. She appeared to think about it genuinely, the way one thinks about what one had for breakfast 3 days ago. Then she said she had received a standard vaccination package before the survey mission. A compact issue set, she thought, for the outer debris field transit. And before that, her last medical treatment had been a respiratory infection she had picked up on a station layover, about 8 months before the mission. She described it as the kind of thing that goes around. She said she had been sick for 4 days and then she had been fine. I noted this and ran the query against the compact vaccination index. The outer debris field transit package contained 17 attenuated compounds for known Kessin and Therathi regional pathogens. The Carith strain was not among them. It had been identified after the package was compiled. Torvin said, very quietly, "What was in the respiratory infection?" We did not know. She had not been treated for it. She had simply recovered. She had not kept a record of the strain. I looked at the breakdown signature again. The molecular fingerprint of how her circulating antibodies had dissolved the Carith analog. I ran it against the Institute's full pathogen cross-reference index, roughly 11,000 classified strains. I was looking for something sharing a surface protein configuration with Carith, distantly related enough to produce cross-reactive immunity. Found 14 candidates, common respiratory pathogens, widely distributed across human transit corridors. Any one of them, encountered and survived in the months or years before the Carith outbreak, could have produced a partial antibody record. Not targeted to Carith, which did not yet exist in the catalog, but close enough at the molecular level that when Carith arrived, the record was already waiting. She had not survived by luck or mutation. She had survived because her immune system had fought something similar once before, filed it, and when Carith arrived, and matched that filing closely enough, the response had already been written. The threat resolved before her body needed escalate. I sat with that for longer than I should have. The Anvarath Institute's gold standard containment threshold, the assay we used to certify a compound safe to transport, to handle, to study in non-sealed conditions, was a pathogen challenge at full concentration, benchmark neutralization time under 30 minutes for a Tier 3 classified agent. We used it to define the outer limit of biological resilience our containment systems needed to account for. I ran the benchmark assay on the subject's baseline serum, not on the subject, on a sealed sample of her circulating serum drawn before any challenge protocol. The neutralization time was 3 minutes and 11 seconds. Our benchmark was 30. We had built every containment protocol. The Anvarath Institute operated on the assumption that 30 minutes was the upper ceiling of what biology, unaided, could do. The subject was still reading her device when I collected the results and called the full council together. I remember looking at her through the observation glass while Torvin read the summary aloud. She had finished whatever she was reading and was looking at the glass, mildly, the way one looks at a window when there is nothing particular to see on the other side. Torvin read the final line of the summary. He set the document down. No one on the council said anything for a while. I filed the amended threat classification the following morning. I did not change it to a higher category. I changed the entire framework by which the Institute had been classifying human baseline biology since the Compact's first contact records, because the category we had been using assumed an upper limit, and we no longer had grounds to assert that one existed. The subject was released from containment 6 days later, standard hold satisfied. Before she left, she asked, in the same flat pigeon, whether we had found what we were looking for. I told her we had found considerably more than that. She nodded, as if this were a routine outcome, picked up the foil packet she had apparently been saving, and walked out. The Kareth plague had by that point killed just under 9 million sentient beings across 12 compact systems. We had been treating it as a containment problem, as a research problem, as a compound development problem. It occurred to me, filing the last of the amended records, that we had been asking the wrong question from the beginning. We had been asking what made her immune. We should have been asking what her immune system was doing the rest of the time, with every other thing it had already quietly filed. We have not yet finished answering that question. I do not expect we will.